We've talked about a lot of well-known missing ships on this channel, from the SS Pacific to the Munchen or the Waratah. But today, I'm pretty sure that we'll cover some ships and the stories about them you probably haven't heard before. Obscure and lesser-known ships that, just like those other ones which are well remembered, sailed out into the ocean and were never seen again once they disappeared over that horizon. Here we are once again, diving to the ocean floor to uncover the lost stories of ships which disappeared at sea. In this newest episode of the series, we will cover 5 more stories of missing ships that vanished off the face of the earth without a trace. Today, we'll be talking about lesser-known and more obscure ships, which I'm sure you've never heard of before. Most of these I hadn't heard of before. But they deserve to have their stories be told, just like the famous ones. Not every ship gets a legacy like the Titanic. Many are simply forgotten. But today, some of them will have their stories told. If you enjoy this video, check out the others in the series. I'll link them in the description. And let's get right to it. The Vaitarna, or the Vigili, was a steamship owned by the A.J. Shepherd and Company from Bombay. Now, unlike the Mount Temple, the ship I talked about in my last maritime video that sank with a dinosaur on board, the Vigili didn't have anything so unique to complement her story, but that doesn't mean it didn't end mysteriously. So mysteriously, in fact, that her and over 700 people who were on board and in her care were never seen again. This is their story. The SS Vaitarna was laid down in 1882 and then launched in 1885. She was registered in Glasgow and was a steep-hulled schooner powered by steam, and she was 170 feet long. She might have been on the small side, but she was a respectable ship. A proud ship. She made up for the small size by being able to comfortably carry passengers in her 25 cabins, which were spread across 3 floors. I imagine she was small and compact, but maybe homely and snug to travel on. Cozy, even. She was brought to Karachi, the largest city in Pakistan, by traveling around Africa for a maiden trip to Bombay. Her trips were propelled by her engines, which generated 73 horsepower, and she could also make use of sails if needed. The ship's captain was Haji Qassam, who you see on screen now. He commanded the ship as she made trade runs between the Kingdom of Kutch and Bombay. During these voyages, which took around 30 hours, she ferried passengers back and forth. So a fun weekend trip on the Vaitarna might have been someone's favorite pastime way back when. And this is just a personal note, but I love steamships. They just seem proud, gliding over the ocean, well-loved, and I'd love to see one day actually sailing, but I know they're few and far between nowadays. It's a shame that most were scrapped or now lay as shipwrecks on the ocean floor. Anyway, the SS Vaitarna operated in a corner of the world where storms were common, and ships would often lay up and just weather out the weather, basically. While ported at Dwarka in 1888, having just amassed a total of 703 passengers for the coming voyage, Vaitarna was, according to local rumors, advised not to head out to sea due to promised bad weather. Modern research disputes this fact, but either way, she headed out. And due to bad weather, she didn't make a scheduled stop, and instead continued just straight for Bombay. The last confirmed sighting of her was off the coast of the port town Mangrol, and after that, well, that's it. She never arrived at her destination, and she was never seen again. Upon not arriving at her destination, the Vaitarna was declared missing. No traces of the ship, no debris or bodies of passengers were ever found. In total, 746 people, 703 of them passengers and 43 of them crew, lost their lives when whatever befell the ship descended upon them. Among the lost were 13 wedding parties and several university students heading for Bombay. An inquiry into the incident was formed by the Bombay presidency. They pointed out that the Vaitarna was poorly equipped when it came to safety measures, not enough lifeboats, and not even enough life jackets for everyone on board. They proposed that she was overwhelmed by the storm and lost. Searches, which had been organized by the Bombay presidency and the inquiry launched to search the area of the ocean for the ship, turned up nothing. No traces of the ship have ever been found. She utterly vanished off the face of the earth. The location of her wreck is still unknown, tucked away in some never-before-seen part of the ocean floor. Now, I also want to offer up a more frightening explanation for her loss than her simply going down in bad weather. That area of the world is known for having heavy waves. What if a giant rogue wave snuck up on the ship in the bad weather and swamped her before anyone had time to even realize what happened? If a wave rolled her over suddenly, everyone would have been trapped inside as the ship sank. It's frightening, but a possible scenario. The sacrifice of those on board was not in vain. Their story left an impact in that region, and that region of the world continues to tell their story and the lessons learned from the loss. The loss also resulted in many new bits of myths, nautical lore, and songs. It became part of that region's folklore, and it's actually where the nickname Vigili comes from. Through these, the stories of those who were on board are left alive, along with the lessons you can learn from a story like this. And even today, the ship isn't entirely forgotten. A film about her was even announced in 2017, but nothing new has come from it yet. When a ship utterly disappears, like the Waratah or the Pacific, it's baffling. Especially when nothing ever washes up somewhere. A lot of people, though, think this can't happen today with our modern tech. Well, it can, and it does. People just disappear. Things just go missing, and it absolutely can happen again. This next story is from just under 50 years ago, and it shows that improved technology doesn't guarantee you can't go missing. Exactly, Spino, thank you. Things can still go missing, and this story shows it. The ship in question, the MV Kairali, vanished with all hands in 1979, and she hasn't been seen since. Now, before we carry on, I'm just going to make this quick fact clear. I could not find an English video about this incident, so I apologize if that is not how you say the name of the ship. Forgive me if that is not how you pronounce it. I really tried to find how you say the name, and I came up dry, except for a questionable source. So anyway, she was a bulk carrier owned by the Kairali Shipping and Inland Navigation Corporation, an Indian company, though she was actually built in Norway. Oh, look at that! Another ship from Norway. It took us long enough to find ourselves here again. Let's see if this one fares any better than that nightmare ghost ship from the 14th century we talked about forever ago now. The bulk carrier was purchased by the Kairali Shipping Corporation after being built for $7.3 million US, not adjusted for inflation. Now, let's get to her disappearance. On her final voyage, the ship had a crew of 49 people. She was traveling to Rostock, Germany with a cargo of 20,000 tons of iron ore. The ship had left port on June 30th, 1979, and radio communications continued with the vessel throughout the 1st, 2nd, and the 3rd of July. Then nothing. The last message from the ship came through at 8 p.m. on July 3rd. 5 days later, the ship didn't arrive at port as scheduled, and she was reported as missing. The following search effort for her and her crew turned up nothing. The only thing that was eventually determined in the following inquiry into the mystery was that the ship was lost somewhere around 500 kilometers off the coast of Margao. Her loss remains a mystery, and her wreck remains undiscovered on the ocean floor to this day. Unless it's happened upon by chance, I doubt it will ever be found. This is an interesting case. The fact that she vanished so utterly is baffling. When a ship disappears, it's one thing. Usually, something will get spat out of the ocean somewhere eventually, even a tiny piece. But when absolutely nothing does, it's just strange. This case reminds me of the Waratah for that reason. The fact the ship and her crew and all traces of them vanished like they were never there is unsettling and shows my point. Even with modern technology and improved tracking systems, things can still just go missing. Unless her wreck is found, the cause of her loss will remain a mystery, but a few explanations have been put forth to explain it. These include bad weather breaking up and sinking the ship, which can happen. There have been cases where ships break apart in literal minutes. Excess cargo overwhelming the ship is another theory. One former crew member actually said that the ship had a history of overloading herself and sailing with the cargo being unbalanced in the hold. Another explanation put forward is that the ship's cargo liquidated. Cargo liquefaction has happened before and caused ships to sink. The ship was sailing with a full belly of iron ore during peak monsoon seasons, and the theory says that the moisture might have caused the cargo to liquefy, which would have caused the ship to lose balance and capsize. More theories include faulty or simply outright broken radar. Allegedly, the radar was under repair and the captain tried to delay sailing, only for him to be forced to commence the voyage without functioning radar. And the final theory is that the ship was attacked by pirates. Pirates are also not something of a bygone age. They still exist today and are just as ruthless as they were in the golden age of piracy. The proposed theory is that the ship was hijacked, the crew taken to an uninhabited island and marooned there to fend for themselves while the ship was taken elsewhere or scuttled. Heck, in this scenario, the crew just being thrown overboard could be likely. If the radar was indeed faulty, then the crew would not have been able to see the pirates coming. It's an interesting idea. And if true, I hope some of the crew aren't still alive on some whatever island they were dumped on. Knowing that would just be horrible. Stuck on an island for almost 50 years, watching your shipmates die and knowing your family has no idea what happened or that you're still out there? That's awful to think about. There's no other way to put that. Either way, we'll likely never know the truth unless the wreck of the ship is found. Until it is, her loss will remain a mystery. And once again, this story shows that even in the modern day, better technology cannot keep you from going missing. It's a humbling notion. Now then, for the next one, we're going back to the 19th century to cover another story from a time when ocean liners were completely on their own out at sea, without any way to contact anyone, and when no one would know if anything had happened until it was far too late to help. And in this case, it did. Now for an obscure one, which is all but completely forgotten. The SS Ismailia was a steam-powered British cargo and passenger liner of the Anchor Line, which was a Scottish merchant shipping company that was founded in 1855 and remained active until 1980. The ship was launched on June 30th, 1870, and she was 1,630 gross registered tons and 300 feet long. That is a large liner for the time. This is actually around the time when ocean liners were getting larger due to an increase in not only immigration, but demand for transatlantic services. The Ismailia was built by the Robert Duncan and Company shipyard in Port Glasgow. Glasgow was also her port of registry. She was actually en route to Glasgow when she disappeared in September 1873. She left New York on what would be her final voyage on September 30th, 1873, with 52 people on board. She was seen again on October 2nd, but never again after that. All 52 people on board were lost with the ship, and absolutely no explanation for the loss exists, and the reason for the ship's disappearance remains an unexplained mystery to this day. Her wreck has never been found, and probably never will be unless again, someone just happens upon it by chance, because we have nowhere to even begin to look for her. Today, she is all but forgotten. I couldn't even find a picture or a painting depicting her, something most ships, even the forgotten ones, enjoy having at the very least. But she doesn't, and there's hardly any information about her online. She has all but disappeared from history, just like she disappeared at sea. You know, what I've really gained a perspective on with this series is just how many passenger liners have vanished with all those on board. It's a lot. Sailing on liners back then was a toss-up when it came to luck. Lots of passenger liners went missing in this general time period. The SS City of Boston, or the SS City of Limerick, for example. Before wireless communication, even sailing on luxury liners came with significant risks, and I don't think we can truly appreciate that risk today. The story of the Ismailia makes me wonder, are there any liners which have vanished, and not just at sea, but from history, and have truly been forgotten today, along with their passengers? Ships which just have no records anymore to tell us they existed. I brought up the city of Limerick right there for a reason, because it's almost in that boat, no pun intended. The only records of it that remain that I could find are the dates it was built, when it vanished, and how many vanished with her. Aside from that, there's almost no details to prove that ship ever existed. It just really makes you wonder, have ships, maybe even passenger liners, vanished, not just at sea, but from history itself? It's an unsettling thought. In a way, ghost ships could truly be real. Our next ship is another passenger liner, from the French Fabre line. Fabre line was a French shipping line service that began operating a small fleet of sailing ships in the mid-1800s, and had ports of call in America, Portugal, Greece, Beirut, Naples, Italy, Egypt, and many, many other countries. The Neustria was a passenger ship, one that also has very little information left about it today. The Neustria is also another ship that I could not find a picture of. Yeah, sure, you do that, Spino. The Neustria was built in France during the mid or late 19th century. Again, there is little information about the ship, so it's hard to find accurate dates. We know, though, that she was 328 feet long and had a beam of 40 feet, as well as a compound engine accompanied by a single screw. And though we have no pictures of the ship from what I could find, we have a fairly detailed description of what she looked like, so we can at least create a mental image. She had one funnel, two masts, a straight stem, and an iron hull. She might have resembled something like this. This is the SS City of Glasgow, another ship which disappeared at sea that I talked about earlier in this series. Hey guys, a little last minute update in the editing right here. I actually took a second peek and did track down a picture of the SS Neustria, along with some additional information that Spino has nicely been spitting out. Because if he's going to keep insisting he appears in these projects, then he is going to have to start offering up some fun facts along the way instead of his quips. But anyway, this is what the ship looked like. Add some sails to those masts, and I wouldn't have been too far off with my guess about her appearance being similar to the SS City of Glasgow. I'll leave this on screen for the rest of the section, but I did manage to find a picture of her, and I was very thrilled. From the description I read of her, I thought, this sounds like too high profile of a ship for no pictures or paintings of to exist at all. And yeah, I was right. There is one, and you see it now. So she has a leg, or rather a screw, up on the Ismailia when it comes to that. Alright, let's get back to the story. Looking at the wider picture, away from appearances, the interior of the ship contained accommodation to carry 18 first-class passengers and 1,100 steerage passengers. The ship carried passengers on the Marseille to New York City route, and was used in the Spanish-American War when Spain used the SS Neustria to bring back Spanish troops from Cuba. She also brought immigrants from Italy to New York. Just like with the last ship, this one's loss remains an unexplained mystery. Her wreck has never been found, and we have no explanations for why she disappeared. If I had to guess, I'd say bad weather, maybe an iceberg, or a fire on board, or even a rogue wave could all be explanations for what was responsible for the loss. But unless her wreck is found, which could still bear the clues to tell us her story, we can only guess what her fate really was. The last time the liner was sighted before she disappeared for good was when she sailed from New York on October 27, 1908, her destination being Marseille. On the voyage, she vanished without a single trace being left for us to have a clue as to what happened. On this crossing, she wasn't carrying passengers, but she and her crew of 38 were lost. Her wreck rests somewhere on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean to this day, and the ship has become little more than an all-but-forgotten footnote in history. For that reason, I don't think anyone will ever go looking for her. She's not remembered enough for people to want to try and find her again. And again, the cause for the loss is unknown, but it could very well be one of the things I offered up a moment ago. Tell me what you think it was out of the four. I'd love to know your theories. Let's have a look at a ship that is more widely known about and has more information about it, way more than the last two, which is great. But it is also still relatively obscure compared to other, more famous missing ships. It's kind of a middleman, or ship. The SS Canastota, a British-flagged, coal-burning, two-masted steel screw cargo steamer built back in 1907 in Glasgow. Try saying that 5 times fast. She weighed 4,904 gross registered tons, was just over 400 feet long, and had a beam of just over 50 feet wide, and could travel at a speed of 11.5 knots on average. Since there is more information about the history of this ship, let's talk a little bit about her service before she disappeared in 1921. The ship was launched in 1907 and exchanged owners throughout the following years until 1915, when she was renamed to the SS Canastota. She had originally been built under the name Falls of Orkney. While under that original name, she made voyages to Norfolk, Virginia, and Auckland in 1908, and was chartered to carry coal to the west coast of the United States from Newcastle. During one of those coal runs in 1908, when the ship was ferrying coal from Newcastle or the Philippines, one of the crew came down with smallpox. The ship was sent to Sydney, and the crew admitted to the North Head Quarantine Station, and another relief crew took the ship back to Newcastle to be loaded. Once the original crew recovered, the ship returned to Sydney, and they took over command once again. After being sold and renamed to the Canastota, the ship made good use of the new Panama Canal and made runs from the east coast of the United States down to New Zealand and Australia. From 1919 to 1921, the SS Canastota made service runs from the ports of New York and Boston, then down to Australian ports and back again via the Panama Canal. Now then, let's talk about the ship's last voyage. The Canastota arrived at port in Cairns, Australia on the 24th of April 1921. She then maneuvered around to various Australian ports, including Townsville, King's Wharf, and the Basin, before finally reaching Sydney on June 3rd. After a brief delay, the SS Canastota left port on June 13th, 1921, and her destination was Wellington, New Zealand. She never arrived, and the ship was never seen again. No one among the 49 people on board were ever heard from again. The only trace of the ship to ever wash up from the ocean was flotsam. My own opinion is that the ship has become a total loss through an explosion of her benzene cargo. If that is so, the crew may be in the open boats in mid-ocean. This is what one of the relatives of one of the ship's engineers said following the disappearance. Very similarly to when the Waratah disappeared, at first, people were hopeful that the ship had broken down due to mechanical problems and was adrift. The ship did have a wireless set, but it was faulty and had limited range. People were still worried over the lack of wireless communication from the ship, though, despite that. Not to mention that if the ship experienced whatever happened to her unexpectedly, maybe no one had the chance to use the set to call for help. The father of the ship's captain said that his son promised to send him a message by a certain date, either late June 14th or early June 15th, but it never came. I don't know what's worse, the ship experiencing whatever happened to her so quickly that there was no time to call for help, or that there was, and she did, maybe for hours, but no one was close enough to hear her call. Now, considering those dates, when she left and when promised communications never arrived, seems to indicate that whatever happened, well, happened very quickly after she left port for the last time. There's not a big window of time we're working with in this case, like in some others that we've talked about. Following the disappearance, there were extensive searches. People were looking everywhere, and this was a search on a scale like the one that happened after the Waratah disappeared. The aftermath of this ship going missing, and then the fallout that happened after that, could honestly make a whole video. There is so much that happened, I don't think I could do it justice unless I made a whole video dedicated to it. If you guys want the search for the SS Canastota video, let me know. I need a whole one to cover everything and do the aftermath of it all justice. I can't just summarize the rest of the story here and get through it as well as it should be told. So if you want that video, tell me in a comment and consider this a little teaser for it. But what you need to know to wrap up the story in this video is that the wreck has never been found, and the ship remains listed as missing to this day, over a century later. Even at the time, she was quickly forgotten, and today is very obscure and little remembered. There are no memorials to her or her crew, and the cause for their loss is still unknown to this day, though the cargo she was carrying was volatile, and it seems likely she either suffered an explosion or had a fire break out on board, which caused her to sink. I always include a bonus story at the end of videos in this series. It's become tradition for this series to include an extra story that is kind of on theme with the others, but also kind of cheating a little bit. Usually in these we have more concrete answers or we know what happened. But today is no exception. And since we're talking about a vessel that mysteriously vanished, it is only appropriate we talk about one named after a mysterious place. HMS Stonehenge. HMS Stonehenge was an S-class submarine for the Royal Navy in World War II. She was ordered in August 1941 and laid down the next year in April 1942, and then finally launched the next year in March 1943. Her beam was 24 feet rounded up, and her length was 217 feet. It should be obvious, but the submarine's name was taken from the prehistoric stone monument, Stonehenge. After training was complete, the sub departed for her first patrol off Norway. 2 weeks later, her first patrol ended without any ships having been sighted. In March 1944, after traveling down to Sri Lanka, she left for her second patrol, and 4 days into it, she fired 2 torpedoes at and then sank the Japanese merchant ship Koro Maru No. 2 with her deck gun. A few days later, she then sank the Japanese mine layer Chokomaru. After this, there were no other incidents, and her patrol ended on February 18th. A week later, on February 25th, Stonehenge left port to patrol north of the Strait of Malacca. Oh no, the Strait of Malacca. She must have found the Orang Medan there. That's why she vanished. Whatever killed the Medan's crew must have got to the sub as well. Alright, Spino, you're right. The Orang Medan had nothing to do with the sub going missing. It would be kind of cool, though. You know I love that story. Anyway, the submarine headed into the Indian Ocean afterward, and from there it was never seen again. On March 20th, she was declared overdue, and no definitive cause for her loss has ever been determined. The most likely explanation is that she hit a mine at some point on her patrol, but again, we don't know for sure. But a mine would have destroyed the sub instantly, which is better than it sinking intact and her crew being trapped on the bottom of the ocean, alive for days, maybe weeks, waiting for rescue that never came. Her wreck has never been found, and since we don't know where she was lost, it likely never will be unless, as I've said several times today, it's just happened upon by chance. But the ocean is big, and it's very unlikely without having any way to narrow the search radius down. But every now and then, people will happen upon shipwrecks, sometimes by accident while doing other things, so maybe. Never say never. Until then, though, the mystery will continue to be unsolved. Okay, that's gonna wrap it up for today. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Tell me what your favorite was in a comment. I'd love to know. And if you want, there's more ships I could cover in a volume 4 at some point in the future. I know you guys tend to really enjoy these videos, and there's plenty more stories, more U-boats, or the SS Java, also known as the SS Lord Spencer, which is also an ocean liner that has been all but forgotten today, but was possibly even tied into the loss of another ship as well. These and more are all stories we can cover in a volume 4 if you are interested. And I think these stories should be told. I see ocean liners in the same way I see abandoned houses. These empty, lonely places that were once loved in the past. If we can't find their wrecks to show them that they still are, then their stories at least deserve to be told to ensure they're never forgotten. And ships like the Lord Spencer, or another ship I recently learned about called the Florence from 1902, and the ones I covered today are very close to being forgotten by most. If you just delete a few pages off the internet, some of these ships might just vanish from the records entirely. The ships and those who are on board them don't deserve that. Also tell me, if you could take a voyage on any of these, which would it be and why? And which story was your favorite out of these? I'd love to know. For me, I really like the SS Vaitarna, so I think I'd choose her for both of those options. But again, I want to hear from you. Okay, with all of that being said, tell me if you want to see a volume 4. Check out some of my other videos. I'll put a few thumbnails on the end of videos I think you might like. And like and subscribe if you enjoy content like this and you want more of it so that I know you want more of it. Thank you for watching. The next topic is one we gotta go way back for. All the way back. Maybe before the oceans were even a thing. We've commuted to the Cretaceous or the Triassic a few times on this channel now, but we got a long bus ride for the next one. We'll be taking a trip to and talking about either the Hadean Eon of the Earth or the Boring Billion. I'm writing the scripts at the same time, and whichever I finish first will be the one we cover first. I hope to see you there for it, though, whichever it ends up being. And if you enjoy videos on this kind of topic, maritime stories, check out volumes 1 and 2 of this series, or my videos on some other well-known missing ships. Or just ships in general, like the Waratah, the Orang Medan. I'll put a few thumbnails at the end, like I said. And again, tell me if you want a video about the aftermath of the SS Canastota's disappearance. Okay, that really is all now, I promise. I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one, everyone, and thank you for watching.